Lit Reactor has a lot of great columns and features and interviews and reviews and all that sort of thing for just the wider literary community. And I'm always picking up on the articles. They have a new one almost every single day of the month. Again, some of them I write, but the majority of them are, of course, written by other writers as well. Today we're going to look at one I wrote, and the reason I'm going through it is because NaNoWriMo is coming up, and this one was entitled Why NaNoWriMo is a Terrible Idea, but I Keep Doing It Anyway. I tried to strike a balance with this particular article where I would not tear down NaNoWriMo as a movement or as a legitimate platform or any of that, but to be able to point out some of the pitfalls that we sometimes fall into as writers and authors that can sort of be troublesome with NaNoWriMo. Sometimes lead to us not being successful or not feeling successful with it. And then things that maybe we do that sort of set us up for failure. And so if we can navigate some of those pitfalls, then we'll have probably a more successful time. And we can even redefine success and what it means to be a writer in a way that doesn't cause us to stumble over NaNoWriMo. So that was my point in writing it. I was planning on going over this article today, and then I'm going to do one other one that's on Writer's Block that was written by another author. It's not on Lit Reactor. It was on a guest blog on someone else's blog. But that'll be the second one I talk about today. But very excited about NaNoWriMo myself, and I want other people to feel successful with it as well. So we'll run through what I struggle with in terms of NaNoWriMo, how I get around it, and maybe that'll help you too. I was planning to do this one today, and I got an email from an acquaintance of mine through writing circles. He's sort of newly full-time writer, and wishing him very well. But he wrote a nice lengthy email sort of talking about how he was applying some of the things that were in this article to what he was doing. And I was kind of excited to see that you write things and put them out there, but when someone responds and says that it meant something to you, that's a good thing. So we're going to look at this one now. I'll be reading through it, but then I'm going to kind of expand on some of the things that we talked about here. So beginning the article, I've been a full-time author since February of 2013. I remember the day I quit my teaching job in the middle of the week. It was a Thursday. I walked outside the school, no longer employed. I had no idea how I was going to make it work. The air smelled fresher, colors were brighter, and I remember the song that was playing on the radio as I drove away. I was quitting primarily because one of my sons was sick and needed full-time care. I was also quitting because I wanted to be a writer and nothing else. It hasn't always been easy, but I've never regretted the choice a single day. I survive by words. I write for my life. I have had to be as creative with finances as I have been with my actual writing. I wouldn't have made it this far any other way. I survived in part by my ability to write lots of words quickly and to other people's liking. So why would I hate National Novel Writing Month? It would seem right up my alley. The idea is to write 50,000 words in the month of November, and or finish a new novel. I need to write anyway, so why wouldn't NaNoWriMo be a great idea? Again, the primary reason I quit my teaching job after 16 years of teaching, roughly, was that one of my sons was sick, and we were looking at having to put him on some medications and stuff, and possibly some invasive treatments. And one option was to sort of get him away from other kids in daycare where he might get sick that would exacerbate the problems. So quitting my job was a way to avoid putting him on certain medications where he could get full-time care. I was also pretty disillusioned with teaching. I think it's a noble profession. I had great students and great coworkers, and many students that were very complimentary and told me what I meant to them and all those kind of things. So it wasn't that I was just treated badly all the time as a teacher or anything. But there were just several things that were going on, some big, some small, that just sort of took away my faith in the school system and what I was doing there. So stepping away from that to sort of follow my own dream of being a writer was the right choice for me. Now, that brought a certain amount of desperation with it, having to make a living at writing. And as I said, I had to be very creative with finances. So you make money from your own writing. Here I'm sharing a Lit Reactor article that I wrote. I was paid for that. I'm a staff writer on a couple different places. I'm applying for writing contracts here and there, but then also just writing my own words and getting them out there. I did a good bit of ghostwriting, and we'll still do that occasionally. With the kidney transplant, I'm on some pretty expensive medications, so ghostwriting kind of helps cover that. Where my other income would probably be fine if I didn't have the medical expenses. Even coming on Twitch and developing this platform, obviously I'm very new at it. I only have about 30 followers and so forth. But surviving as a writer for me was always about exploring new areas that had potential. And so this is one area I'm exploring and one that I'm building up over time and willing to put in the time and the investment. And while other things are doing well for me, I do okay on Patreon, I do okay selling on Amazon, I do okay with ghostwriting and with the staff writing like I do with Lit Reactor. But you always need to be looking at the next thing. If you become stagnant in writing, things go badly. And I know some older authors who were in 70s, 80s, 90s, and on were doing well. When ebooks came around, they didn't adapt well, and they didn't change with the times very quickly, and it became a problem for them. When self-publishing became more prominent and filled up the marketplace the way it does now, there were a number of traditional authors that I knew and in the horror circles that I was in, and then some wider circles out, that didn't adapt well to that, and their income went down, and they didn't have any sort of like plan B or any sort of vision to try something new. Twitch is very new for writers. It's a new platform in the sense that there's far fewer writers platform than many others that are out there. And there's still a lot to find. I'm still searching. I search the writing tag all the time and follow big and small writers that are doing work on here, seeing what they're doing, figuring out what I can apply to myself. And but still, it's kind of a new frontier for writing, and a lot of authors out there aren't even aware of it or aren't utilizing it in any way. I wish more would get on, because I like to see that exploration. What other people figure out, I can use, and vice versa. I think we become stronger that way. Of course, writing doesn't even have its own category on Twitch, so it's sort of that new. And I find that exciting. I think it's a good thing. But again, that's sort of how I survived, is being willing to take something new that I haven't figured out yet and then find my way through it. All right, the next section, I hate word counts. This is not unique to me, but my problem with word counts isn't the norm among writers. I have a number of medical issues that come with medications that cause cognitive problems. One of the issues is difficulty with math. More than that, numbers wreak havoc in my head. I become fixated with patterns that aren't there as I write down word count numbers. Now, what that means is, like, if I track a daily word count, if like the number 7 keeps popping up all the time, like my mind will fixate on that. And there's some mental disorders that are about that, but for me it's cognitive, where like my brain is always trying to find a pattern in the numbers. I did this much yesterday, this much today, it added up to this number. I did this, it added up to this number. And then I would just fix on just the numbers themselves, not to mention like just tracking word count. Well, I wrote more yesterday than the next day, that kind of thing. Bringing it back to troubles more authors can relate to, tracking word counts over time inevitably discourages me. If I have one bad day, that puts me behind for a week. I feel like I'm failing all week. NaNoWriMo can drag that feeling out for a whole month. If I stop to edit a long work, my word count drops off precipitously. I'm still doing writing work, but by the word count metric, I'm not doing anything. There is no way around word counts, though. I'd never hit deadlines if I stayed unaware of how many days I needed to finish a novel and get it to the editor. So I do daily minimums. The lower the better. Once I pass those minimums, I stop tracking my writing for the day. I keep writing, but I've passed the minimum. There we go. When I start tomorrow, I'll add 500 words and pass that goal. I have no idea how much I wrote 3 days ago. I don't know if I'm having a good week or a bad one. I don't know which days were my high output days or which ones were not. I have no comparisons, just today's goals. Tracking daily word counts and a running total for NaNoWriMo is the opposite of my process. Now, I don't think this makes me special among writers, but I do think it makes me unusual. And I mean by that most writers perform well by tracking word counts. Being able to say, okay, I'm trying to do this much each day, and then I'm trying to make this much this week. It kind of keeps you on track. It allows you to focus. It allows you to see, okay, I'm spending a little too much time on this and on the other things. But there are traps to it, and one of them is like if I plan, okay, if I write 1,300 however many words, it's going to get me to, if I write every day or almost every day, it gets me to 250,000 words or 300,000 words or 400,000 words. And I know a lot of authors that do well with that. They have a yearly goal, and that yearly goal encompasses all the things that they want to accomplish that year. And sometimes they exceed it, sometimes they come a little short, but it sort of drives them along. And if they're running behind, they know they can pick up the pace and get going. For me, that doesn't work really well. And the reason it doesn't is because I need to edit. Some people do a pretty clean first draft. Mine needs work, and everybody's needs work. But if you're spending a solid day editing, even if you spread it out over a few days, that takes up writing time. And it's as important, just as important as getting the words down, is getting the words edited and making your revisions and things of that nature. But if your entire metric of success is word count, then those days that you edit, you're behind. You haven't written as many words. Now, I do think there is value in writing many words. If you write many, many, many short stories, you're going to get better at writing short stories. Now, a lot of those short stories are not going to be great, but the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more you explore different areas of writing. And so that volume, I do think, creates quality. It's kind of the idea that if everything I put down on paper has to be perfect, I'm going to struggle more and I'm going to have less good pieces. If I can do anything I want and rework it, set it aside, work on something else, whatever it is I want to do, the volume of work, the more I produce over time, I'm going to get better at the skills. I'm going to get better at the storytelling. I'm going to find my own pitfalls and avoid them. And over time, I will produce more quality works for not having been afraid to produce them in the first place. So there is a value to volume. But I also got to give myself a break in terms of tracking word counts. The daily minimum works pretty well for me. Now, if I'm on a tight deadline, that daily minimum can be high. When I was writing The Maidens of Zombie Kingdom, I wanted them out by the first of the year, and I believe that was this year. So over October, November, December of 2019, I was writing about 2,000 words a day just on that. I had other things to do too. I actually kept that pace going into the new year a good bit, and then I felt myself burning out, and I was thinking, I suddenly realized, okay, that was a deadline pace, and it was keeping it up out of habit. So I can pull back. So I pulled back to 1,500. I pulled back to 1,000. And because I'm writing multiple things at a time, a lot of times, if there's not a tight deadline, my daily word minimum will be 500 per work. So that could be over more than one novel or more than one piece. And I typically will write more than that. But by having a low minimum, I get to it quickly, and then I kind of feel free to keep going. And over time, that adds up to some pretty good work, or at least getting the work on time. I schedule my writing and my time off. I use an organizational tool online called Trello. It's primarily a site for organizing teams and groups in shared projects. I do not use it as intended, though. The large categories are boards, the smaller categories in each board are lists, and the categories of each list are cards. You can add details, make comments, attach files to the cards. In the corporate setting, a board might be video projects. The lists would be each individual project. The cards would be the tasks to complete assigned to individual workers. You then track a project through until completion. I'm using it wrong, but right for me. I'm using it as post-it notes on a calendar. My board would be January 2021. Each of the lists is a day from the 1st through the 31st. Each of my cards is a task for that day. So I'll have vampire novel repeated on 31 lists instead of as a single project. I can move stuff around, reorganize my month. As a side note, I'm using a board on Trello to organize and catalog all my trunk stories. I'm writing the submission history of each one in the details, and even attaching the stories to their cards, so all my work is archived in one place should I ever need it remotely. That may be a topic for another article, and I probably will write that later on, how I use Trello as sort of my organization tool. The point is, as you read this, I can tell you what I plan to be writing on any given day as far out as February 2nd. I'm a little further out than that now, but not completely at this point. That's probably insane, but it's how I know what I need to work on in order to get things finished on time. I schedule my time off too, at least 2 long weekends a month. I'm actually supposed to be on one right now, but I had a bunch of work pile up, so it sort of bled over. So I'm not perfect at keeping my weekends off, but I try. All right. At least 2 long weekends a month. Many writers fall off of writing and feel guilty every day they don't get back to it. Some writers can't get back in the groove of writing if they take time off. In November, my plan is to stop writing after November 20th and not start back again until December 1st. In December, I'm stopping around the 19th or 20th and not starting again until the new year. Many writers wouldn't be able to start back up after that long of a break. So I recognize that that's not a good system for everybody. There are a lot of writers, and I would say probably the majority of writers get cold if they take that much time off. Now, sometimes we end up taking that much time off anyway. We have doctor stuff, we have surgeries, we have family trips, we have busy work weeks. So we end up not writing for some of that time anyway. But if you don't plan time off, then that's just guilt. You just feel guilty the whole time. That you should sit down each day, so you just kind of carry that with you everywhere you go. But I recognize that a lot of authors can't stop on November 20th, start back on the 1st, and be in, I guess, fighting shape, you'd say, in terms of writing. And so it may not be the best idea, at least not that long of a break. But I still hold that breaks are good for you, because if you don't plan them, sometimes they end up falling on you anyway. You get all burnt out. You feel like you can't think of the words. The next article we're going to look at is by another author on writer's block. But some of that comes from not giving yourself breaks. So sometimes life sort of forces you to take a break if you're not taking them yourself. So if you can be strategic about that, I think sometimes you can utilize your writing time better. Now, of course, I'm going to be very busy from the 1st to the 20th, streaming on here with NaNoWriMo, but then a number of other projects, including some freelance projects that I'm doing for other people. So it's a busy writing month. And then, of course, the time off serves me better than when I know I have to work hard on both sides. Instead of burning out, I plan real breaks for myself. I know I've planned enough days to get everything done, so I don't worry about it when I'm off. I don't have to think about it when what I need to be writing and when, because it is written out and I can let it go when I'm not working on it. It's not that NaNoWriMo prohibits any of this. I'm doing Nano again this year, even with my long November break planned. For authors who struggle to produce over 1,000 words a day on a regular basis, planned days off don't lend themselves to success in hitting 50,000 words in 30 days. Nano is a consistent and relentless push for many authors who participate. If they want to succeed, any day missing the mark, planned or not, makes the goal slip further and further out of reach. So that's a big problem for a number of writers, I think, is that each miss is gets you behind. So I was talking about earlier that for me, I would have one bad day. So if my goal in order to stay on track for whatever it was I wanted to accomplish that year is I have to write 1,500 words a day. If I have one day where I barely get 200, then I'm behind all week, and so I sort of carry that burden with me all week. And unfortunately for NaNoWriMo, for authors who struggle to produce that level of words, each day that isn't perfect really pulls down every other day, and then you'll have a day where you write 2,000-3,000 words, which should be a success for an author that doesn't usually write that much. But the problem is, because they're so far behind, they didn't even catch up, so they can't even appreciate the really good day of writing that they had. So again, it can be a problem, and that leads into the next section. NaNoWriMo is not meant to be discouraging. NaNoWriMo is not meant to be discouraging, but for many writers it is. National Novel Writing Month started out as a small grassroots challenge among a close group of authors to encourage each other to start and finish a novel. It grew because it is encouraging for many people, and we need to challenge ourselves in order to grow and achieve. NaNoWriMo has an official site you can join to track your writing, earn badges, buy merch, and buddy up with other authors globally or locally. I'm Jay Wilburn on the NaNoWriMo site if anybody wants to follow me there. I'll buddy up with you. In non-pandemic years, you can plan physical meetups to write together at restaurants, bookstores, libraries, cafes, etc. NaNoWriMo raises a great deal of money for charity as well. It is an inherently good part of the writing community. And again, as much as I'm talking about the downfalls, I really did not want to tear down NaNoWriMo. I'm doing it. I have friends who are doing it, and I just wanted to talk about the problems you could face without pulling any punches, but then also not trying to tear down the entire institution. For many individuals, it does develop into an unfortunate pattern. They start off strong, fall behind a little, have to work harder to catch up, fall behind again, fail to catch back up to pace, fall further behind, sometimes give up early, and feel they failed. You could finish the novel on December 7th, and it is still a completed novel. The all-or-nothing mindset of a deadline in a challenge often leads to a mental barrier where once it becomes mathematically impossible to finish the goal, it is hard to keep going at all. Why work so hard on the 17th of November if I know I'm going to come up 10,000 or more words short anyway? I'm kind of tired. I'd rather go watch Netflix if I'm just going to fail. Obviously, this is the wrong mindset to approach this challenge mentally. It is about developing a habit of writing consistently every day. However, by design, you either succeed or fail at your nano goal. That's hard to get around. The next year you come back to the site and see the failures of previous years lined back through time. We fall into patterns. Trying to write through Thanksgiving isn't always easy either. I'm not going to dwell on that too much because every month has something that can get in the way of writing daily. Even for people who succeed, there is often burnout. If you marathon wrote the last 5,200 words to reach your goal on the last day, you may not get up on December 1st feeling refreshed and ready to write again. I know a few authors who went through extended dry spells following Nano. I planned long breaks at the end of December and November on purpose. So again, I think even for authors who succeed at NaNoWriMo, there's a real risk of burnout. There's a real risk of a real slow December, which again may not be a problem, especially if you plan that. But if it's not something you have power over, where you are burned out and you don't know when you can start again, I've known authors that have gone months without writing after they burst through a Nano attempt. Now, of course, that's not what it should be about, and that's certainly not the goal. But it's something to be aware of. And you want to design your performance around success now, but also success later. Whatever you write in November needs to be edited, so you can't be completely burned out and tired of the piece before you get to that stage. And then especially if you're writing something longer than 50,000 words, you're going to need more than November to finish it anyway if you're on that 50,000 word pace. And I think that's healthy. I think it's healthy to develop a habit in your conjunction with NaNoWriMo that's going to serve you the rest of the year. And I think making a lower goal is acceptable. So if 50,000 words is a failure mark for you, then going to 40 or 30 or less is fine too. Write a novella that's shorter, where maybe you don't have to even write as many as 1,000 words a month, 1,000 words a day, sorry, for the month. And then you can still be successful. So I think those should be acceptable, and moving away from the 50,000 words or moving away from the 30 days or whatever it is should be a part of people's experience with NaNoWriMo. Put in the flexibility so that success, however you define it, is within your reach. And then maybe in future years you build up to something bigger, and then maybe month to month when you're not nano, you're setting goals for yourself that are both realistic and move you forward in your writing career. All right, we need a National Editing Month as the next section. Many publishers shut down submissions during and after November because they are tired of reading terrible NaNoWriMo novels. Powering through the first draft of a novel is only the beginning. Maybe it needs to be more than even 50k words to finish the story. Writing at a breakneck pace probably means second or third drafts are needed. Maybe more drafts than that. We really need a National Editing Month where we work diligently on novels we completed in November. Making the novel good is another effort that comes after making it in the first place. I probably got the most comments on that particular idea, the National Editing Month. And some people do that already anyway, and it's unofficial, but some people do it in January, some people do it in March, and it's the idea of working on cleaning up a novel that you've worked on previously. I didn't really have anybody that was highly negative of that, and again, even though the article directs at some of the things that are tough about NaNoWriMo, I think I worded it in a way that's still supportive, so I didn't have people lashing out thinking I was attacking something they hold dear. But again, a lot of people had comments on the editing part, including some publishers who again closed down after November just because most people who are turning in hey, nice you join me, Nova. Authors who are turning in NaNoWriMo novels with only minimal editing, publishers are tired of that. So they literally shut down for months so that they aren't getting NaNoWriMo novels in their submission box, because again, most of them are not past the first draft. They're not a lot of people aren't doing what they need to do. Now again, the point of NaNoWriMo is to get the work done in the first place, and then the author's responsibility kicks in to be able to improve those novels and things over time. But this is just a reality of what's going on. There are a few notable exceptions with nano novels, but the overwhelming opinion of the publishers who read many of these creations is that not enough work has been done in the rewriting, editing, or revision phases of the process. Write your nano novel, but then take the time to improve it. Why do I do this anyway? And of course, this is the second point of the article, is that even though NaNoWriMo kind of goes against my normal practice of writing, where I don't track word counts from day to day, why go through it anyway? And that's a good question. I've read in the article, sometimes I do stupid things. I like the community. Many of my author friends give it a shot each year, even though I am loath to post word counts. I like encouraging others and being encouraged. There is real value in finding connection in a creative field that is generally solitary by nature. One thing that's helped me is coming on Twitch, and even though I'm very, very new at it, there are a lot of writing streams, even with some smaller authors, newer authors, and then of course some that are quite successful with this. And being able to come on while they're writing and seeing other people writing together, being able to write a story on here and having people jump in, adds a sense of community that is pretty much lacking in just the normal nature of the writing industry, where it's quite solitary. I think social media has helped that a good bit, but I think a lot of authors are missing out by not being a part of Twitch. And even at this sort of phase where writing is a very, very small percentage of what you can see on Twitch, there's plenty of streams out there. I'm constantly looking them up, constantly finding them, and following authors with a lot of people following them, and then some where sometimes I'm the only one watching. But just seeing what they're doing and how they're expressing themselves is good, and I think NaNoWriMo provides that on like a large scale for many authors. I'm often writing that much in November already anyway. When most of my income was with ghostwriting, I was often writing 12,000 words a day on a regular basis. I can't get anywhere near those numbers today for a variety of reasons, but between 1,000 and 2,000 is common for me. Those 12,000 word days were killing me, and I was not in good health at the time. Had nothing to do with the writing. I was just in gradual kidney failure from polycystic kidney disease. But at that point in my life, my primary income was ghostwriting and not the work that I was writing for myself. And so volume was required for me to be able to make money off ghostwritten novels, ghostwritten articles, ghostwritten everything, writing whole bunches of things that had other people's names on them. I had to produce words and I had to produce them fast. And so I was paying my bills, paying mortgage and everything else with the income from writing. And I'm proud that I was able to do that. But again, that was a ridiculous pace. 12,000 words a day is nuts. And fortunately, I was able to make them good enough that the companies that were hiring me to ghostwrite were pleased. When even though I'm in better health now with the transplant, just things are a little slower mentally and stuff with some of the medication. So there's no way I'm producing 12,000 words a day, and it wouldn't be the best use of my time either. It took me a while, but I got back to some decent numbers where I can do a few thousand words a day. But again, part of that comes from just not getting up in my head. So I have my word minimums, but sometimes I can't tell you how many words I wrote a day because I'll have a minimum on this novel, a minimum on this one, a minimum on the short story I'm writing for something, and all of those add up, and then I'll go over those minimums and probably have a few thousand words a day, but I don't track it. I don't keep up with it, because if I write fewer words the next day, I don't want to feel like I failed. So I get past my minimums, and that keeps me on track, keeps me on schedule. But I don't want to be able to compare this Tuesday to next Tuesday, or to know how many good or bad days I had. Just want to produce the work, do the best I can, and keep moving forward. Again, that is the complete opposite of NaNoWriMo, but again, I'm willing to change my pattern a little bit to participate with my friends. All right, in 2019, I was writing the 3 books of the young adult fantasy trilogy Maidens of Zombie Kingdom on a pretty tight schedule. I didn't use the official site, but I played along with Nano anyway and wrote more than one book, well past 50,000 words total for the month. I started in October and continued into December to finish those books. So that was my 2019 NaNoWriMo. I produced a lot of words. Probably should have been on the site, then I could record it and know how many they were. But again, I don't like that. I don't want to know how I did last year compared to this year. All right, question came in. What could help spark a passion for a story? How can you stay motivated in writing the first draft of a story? That's a good question, and it's one that I've approached different ways. Sometimes it starts with an idea, and of course it probably depends on what you're writing. So if we're talking about a longer work, then it's a story that you're really committing to. 50,000 words is a lot of time. And then, of course, if you get into longer novels, 80, 100,000 words, which isn't uncommon for various genres, you're committing to something. So it really needs to be an idea that you care about enough to keep going. Then you kind of have to have a system to keep yourself going, even when it doesn't feel like it's going great. So you have to care enough about the story, and you have to trust yourself enough that when you're having a bad day, a day when it feels like the words aren't coming, when it feels like you're just kind of drudging through, that kind of thing, you still need to have enough faith in yourself and the story to kind of keep going through those moments and know that anything that doesn't work perfect, you can come back and fix. In terms of going beyond just the the practical of being able to keep going. Going for the sort of the ideas that you're kind of holding off on. So like I keep a board of titles and things that I can use, and primarily I use those for short stories. But there's a lot of where I think, oh, that's a cool title, I'm going to save that for something, and then I get into the things I have to get done, like the things that are on deadline and all that, and sort of these like dream projects, which again can be a distraction. You can, if you're one of those people that goes for the shiny new object, that can really get in the way of finishing a work. But finding one of those sort of passion projects where it's like, okay, if I could do whatever I wanted, I would write this. And a lot of times we set that, especially if you're doing this for a living, you kind of set that to the side and say, well, I need to focus on the stuff that makes money and the next book in this series and all that, which is good. But sometimes it's good to take that passion project, that thing that like, if I could do anything I wanted, I'd want to write this. And then that, I think, can spark something as well. In terms of staying motivated, I think it's good where you start and where you stop in a work, I think is significant. So I've found, like, the way I used to do it was I would just write and write and write and write until I ran out of ideas, and then I'd stop. Now the problem with starting back the next day was, well, I ran out of ideas. So you're doing all this stuff where I go back and reread and things like that, but you kind of almost feel stuck every day. If you keep writing, 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 and then you kind of stop in the middle of something, like don't finish off the scene. If you have it clear in your head what you want the scene to be, if you stop before the end of that scene, when you come back the next day, you know what you're going to write. And then once you finish that scene, you're kind of on a roll. You kind of got your creative pathways open in your brain, and you're moving again with it. And then sometimes you just got to change up the way you're writing. So like sometimes you can lose passion for a story if it feels like it's not special. Like if you're writing a crime fiction story and it feels like every other story you've ever seen, or it feels like well, that's kind of predictable. I feel like I've seen that in a TV show before. I just got through interviewing an author named S.A. Cosby, who has one of his books is Blacktop Wasteland. Stephen King was posting about that book, so I'm quite jealous of Mr. S.A. Cosby. I tease him about how jealous I am of him, but I am really proud of him. One of the things we talked about in his interview is that he does an amazing job of taking left turns when I don't expect it. So I've read a lot of crime fiction, so I kind of have an idea how stories go. His opening scene is sort of this drag race thing, and everybody kind of gets in trouble with the cops and that kind of thing. I'm not going to spoil the story, but it looks like the scene is going a certain way. He drops in hints that it might not be going that way, and you could overlook them because there's this action going on, but then the scene takes a turn from what I expected it to be into something entirely different. And I think that keeps the writing fresh. So I think sometimes if you kind of have a path laid out for your story and it feels like you're just sort of going through the motions, if you get to a moment where you got to make a choice, go with a choice that's not obvious. Make the characters do something that's, I guess, in their character, but is surprising, something that the person in the audience following wouldn't expect. One of the problems with getting bored with a story is that if you're bored with it, there's a real risk that the reader's going to be bored. So the idea, I guess, is to keep yourself excited. So kind of make those twists, take them in different directions, and find a new way to tell it. All right, initially I was going to write a Werewolf Academy type story with the themes of political and cultural climate of America, with a side intention of criticizing J.K. Rowling. I think that sounds like a great book. You could talk all night about how Rowling has kind of let people down. I was just thinking about that today, because again, I have kids that are of that age, and they love those books, and I'm highly disappointed in her, and I don't want to take the joy of it away from my kids, So it's a dilemma for me, because I feel like what she's done has done damage, because I remember I was teaching school at the time when those books came out. I was teaching elementary and then later middle school, and I remember for the first time seeing kids pick up books that were so thick and so far beyond. It was like It was like when kids used to read like the J.R. The Lord of the Rings books, and seeing kids read like that again was cool. But then my wife worked at churches, and we were working with youth groups, and there's a number of gay teens who were kind of trying to find their place. And of course, this was early 2000s. We've made good progress, but being in the South and being around areas like that, um, it's never been easy to be in the LGBT community, and it was particularly tough in some of the areas we were. But I found a number of those kids really connected with those books in a way that helped a lot, and they continued to love them as they were sort of working out their identity as they got older, once they were away from home, away from school, and could be true to themselves in a way that they maybe couldn't have as easily when they're still figuring things out in high school or when they were under someone else's roof. That was still a source of great comfort for them. And for J.K. Rowling to just suddenly, I guess it wasn't sudden, but to show her true colors, especially with the trans community, who's probably one of the most at-risk groups in America from violence and discrimination and everything else. It's such a deep betrayal that it bothered me a great deal. But back to your story. Back to your story idea. I think that sounds great. I love those kind of academy books because I've written some young adult and I've written some middle grades. One academy type book that's centered around time travel, and I think those are great books, and partly for the same reason and same groups that that benefited from those Harry Potter books that back then. So we can talk about that all night. I was probably nonverbal when Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows was first published. Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, that's bothersome, and it's worthy of satire. So, if you decide to write that, I think that would be cool. Okay, in 2020, I did use the official NaNoWriMo site. I'm also developing Twitch as an author platform for myself, so I've decided to live stream my writing each day of a new novel called Rise Again, because NaNoWriMo is not crazy enough already. You can see me writing live on Twitch at twitch.tv/jwilburn. Kind of weird to be talking about this on Twitch, but this was part of the article. Or see writing videos on my YouTube channel, Captain Three Kidneys. This novel will not be good when I'm done. It will not be ready, not yet. I have it on my list of things to work on starting in late January. No telling when it will be ready after that. If you know yourself as an author and you can keep the process in perspective, NaNoWriMo can be very rewarding. You are allowed to set a lower goal that might be more realistic for you. The ultimate goal behind the surface word count goal is to create a consistent habit. Regular writing and daily writing leads to better writing and finished work over time. Finishing a story, any story, is an achievement and encourages you to keep going. There are a lot of reasons not to participate, and that is the right choice for some authors. Challenging yourself can be good, and whether you hit the 50,000 word mark or not, every word you write is one step closer to a completed novel. Remember to edit a lot when you're done, and you'll be fine. So again, that was my article on Lit Reactor. I do a couple each month, but Lit Reactor is a great site. I read the other contributors' articles each month, and there's just a bunch of great stuff on editing, on book reviews, interviews, process type stuff, but then also trends in the literary industry and stuff like that. So Lit Reactor is kind of the leading edge. I'm really proud to have kind of earned a spot with them as a writer, and I really enjoy sharing the other ones because I was reading Lit Reactor for years and years and years before I got their attention with some of my other writing. One other article I want to look at is a little less formal, but I think it's good. The Secret to Writer's Block guest post by Armand Rosamilia. This appeared on Heather L. Barksdale's blog. Armand Rosamilia is a horror and crime fiction writer. He's focusing a lot on crime fiction right now. Love his books. He has a bunch of great ones. The Dirty Deeds crime fiction series is one of my favorites, and they're shorter reads, so they're not like big mammoth books that you sometimes get with crime fiction. They're quick reads, and I love the characters. Very, very pulpy type writing. He has Green River Blend is a horror book about coffee. That's really good. And he's done some nonfiction, a bunch of stuff. I could talk about his books all night, but I want to look at his article. So, The Secret to Writer's Block guest post by Armand Rosamilia. All the World's a Stage, Beating Writer's Block by Armand Rosamilia. I'm going to toss this out there to start. This is Armand Rosamilia talking. I don't struggle with writer's block. I have an easy system I use each and every day, and it goes like this. Number one, I have 10 to 12 open projects at any given moment. He really does. He has a dry erase board that's full. I do too, but I'm not working on everything at the same time. About half of them are contracted short stories, novellas, and novels with publishers, so there is incentive to get them done by the deadline. Number two, fear of having to go back to working in the real world is always in the back of my mind. Armand Rosamilia is a full-time author as well. I worked retail management jobs for years and hated every second of it. Nothing worse than having to deal with nasty customers, inept bosses, fellow workers, and all for an awful salary and long, long days. He did not like his day job, if you didn't pick up on that. But I have encountered writer's block in the past, especially before going full-time as a writer, and while working those soul-sucking retail jobs, I learned a few lessons along the way. I enjoy passing along to newer authors I mentor from time to time. Armand Rosamilia really does serve other authors. He has extended conversations with new authors, spends time with them, and gets together for writing workshops. He has a podcast that he co-hosts called the Mondo Method, and he and Chuck Buda are the hosts of that, and they discuss writing topics. I listen to it every time. They're doing they did an episode. The latest episode was on NaNoWriMo. They participate on Twitter. If you're on there, Mondo Method, the hashtag connects you with a bunch of writers that sort of encourage each other to keep going, and they're going to be doing that through NaNoWriMo as well. So you can find them on the site. Armand Rosamilia is on the NaNoWriMo site. I just buddied up with him. All right, we encountered the writer's block. Now let's see what he has to say about it. We've been inundated with the writing advice, write what you know. It's not really about only writing about people or jobs you've done. Hopefully, you've never shoved a pickaxe into someone's head and buried them, yet writers write about killing people all the time. I've never actually baked an apple pie, but I can write a character doing it, right? Apple pie. Anyway, even though you can technically write about anything you want, there needs to be some common sense rules to follow or unfollow. We're creative types, so we can do whatever we want. I like to travel, Armand says. I have an awesome wife who also loves to travel. His wife is pretty cool. I'm not talking jetting to Paris or Rome for the weekend. I'm a writer after all. I can pay the bills and buy too many books, but I'm not rich by any stretch. But we travel quite a bit up and down the East Coast, either for conventions, book signings, baseball games, or to visit New Jersey, where I was born and raised. We hit all points in between whenever possible. We'll ignore chain restaurants and find all the local places to eat. We'll check out weird places to visit. We love museums. If by museum you mean the Pest Museum, Comic Book Museum, Baseball Hall of Fame, and any other we can find. I have enjoyed going to conventions with him a great deal. Some of my best memories as a writer involve being at conventions with Armand. So I'm looking forward to the day when, of course, the pandemic passes and we're able to go back to having conventions again. Of course, with my health, with the kidney transplant and being on immunosuppressives, I'm in a vulnerable group when it comes to the pandemic. So I definitely need to wait until it's over, not just everybody thinks it's okay and we get back out there. I mean, I'm looking for that date when this strand of coronavirus kind of goes away and we're back to the normal ones that weren't killing us all the time. All right. Armand goes on to say, as a writer, I watch everyone and anyone. They are all future characters. They are locals with accents. They eat strange foods. They have strange sayings. They wear strange outfits. Whatever, whenever I'm stuck for a character or a story idea, or just feeling lazy and would rather binge watch Netflix instead of working, I refer to the two items above. If they aren't motivating enough, I go back through my memories. Remember the grandma with purple hair in Sandusky, Ohio? How about the drag queen at the gas station in South Carolina who offered me some of his M&Ms? So many characters, so little time to write them all. Armand says, writer's block is the mind killer. It's the negative thoughts that trip you up. Your brain is shouting, there's nothing in here, nothing to see, go away, nothing left to write, stick a fork in you because you're done. When that story just won't work itself out and those characters aren't behaving and letting you know what comes next, I'll start something new. Even if it isn't a story I need to finish or will need. No writing is wasted. I've cannibalized so many of these flash fiction pieces over the years. These scenes between purple hair grandmother and drag queen M&M's sharer, that it never goes to waste. Armand says it's all practice. It gets the creative juices flowing. It helps you solve the puzzle, what comes next. A writer never stops writing, even when he or she is out and about. Need some crazy characters? Go sit in Walmart for an hour. You'll see all kinds of weird. I'm lucky to have a wife who isn't creative, but she's an eavesdropper like me. They really do listen in on people a lot of times. I think they just find people interesting. I do too. I'll find myself in public situations and I'll just kind of fixate on a group of people or a person, curious about their mannerisms, how they're talking, how they're behaving. Those kind of things just fascinate me. Maybe all writers suffer from that sort of eavesdropping condition. We'll listen in on a conversation in the next table in a restaurant and she'll want to know what's going to happen next. So many of those people, their words have appeared in my stories over the past 30 years. Writer's block for me is a matter of what's important. Netflix are getting paid to make things up. I enjoy traveling and eating and paying the electric bill, so refer to the two rules above always. Thanks for reading my babble, and hopefully it helps. Armand does help a lot of writers, and if you're looking for just a podcast that'll give you some regular writing advice, the Mondo Method podcast, Mondo Mando, Method Method podcast, just a great one. I listen to it all the time, and anytime I'm running or biking or walking or anything like that, I'll put on podcasts, and I always make sure to catch up on that one. So he's a guy with some pretty good advice.